So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zaneta Evans, and I just thank you for joining us. There was some housekeeping items that was included in the chat that I just want to briefly mention before we get started. So if we just ask that everyone keep their phones or their videos muted. I want this to be more of an interactive conversation. So just encouraging everyone to, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, concerns, feel free to ask those. I initially thought to do a presentation, but again, I wanted this to be more engaging and a dialogue versus me just presenting some information. So if you have questions, you don't have to wait till our Q&A session, because there's not a Q&A session. We can just have conversation and ask questions as they come up based on the information that I'm bringing to your attention. So I will go ahead and get started. Like I said, my name is Zaneta Evans. I'm currently the program manager over the Healthy Living team. Prior to being the program manager, I was a co-responder, so I did have the privilege of riding with Denver police, responding to individuals in crisis, and just being able to bridge that gap with connecting people with the mental health services or just resources out within the community. Today, my focus is really just on the African American youth. And with thinking about this year's Gift of Hope's theme, which is limitless, I really want to just have a conversation of what does that mean for our youth? How do you have a conversation to gain their understanding and their minds from their perspective, what that means and how they can incorporate their mental health and be the best individual that they can be, considering all the challenges that they have as a youth. So from that, just want to start the conversation off with the 8 dimensions of wellness. And so as we have a conversation today and we're thinking about our youth and we're thinking about the challenges that they have and the struggles that they have, try and focus on that realm of the 8 dimensions. And those 8 dimensions include the mental component, their emotional component, their physical component, their environmental component, their vocational component, their social, spiritual, and I just riddled them off and I feel like I'm forgetting one. Financial, so money wise, that dimension as well. So again, this conversation is about our youth and the challenges they may have in the area of mental health and the feelings they may have with connecting with a therapist. And so really, when I was preparing for this breakout session, I wanted to talk about what some challenges may be or what would prevent a youth from reaching out to get help, from reaching out and connecting. And really, as I was thinking, the biggest thing that came up is that connection, that relationship. So how do we build connections? How do we build relationships with our youth? And more specifically with our youth during this time, it's more challenging, especially amidst COVID, where you're not able to have that social aspect. You're encouraged to do social distancing. So a lot of times those connections that they had with their mentors or their teachers, they've lost those connections in some aspects. So they're isolated. They're wanting to be in their room and just not engaged. So I want to open it up and ask, what are some challenges or questions that you have in regards to working with youth or even having a conversation with youth in regards to their mental health? And so, Amy, I'm not watching the chat, so I'll look to you to unmute or let me know if there's a question in the chat.
Can do.
Okay.
So we have a question.
Okay.
What have you seen as a couple of the biggest challenges?
So some of the biggest challenges that I've had, like I alluded to earlier, is just that sense of a lost connection, more specifically during the pandemic, where individuals don't have the mentorship or the ability to connect. A lot of our youth had connections with, say, like their football coach or one of their high school teachers or counselors. And so due to the challenges of the pandemic, in the social distancing, some of those relationships have been cut off, so to speak, or they just don't have that one-on-one connection with that individual that they had. Additionally, I've seen where as adults, we think a certain way because we're adults, and then our youth think completely different. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just that challenge in making a connection, being able to have a conversation, or even knowing how to approach your youth and talking about their mental health. I know for a lot of adults, they're scared to talk about suicide or talk about depression, because in their mind, if they're bringing up these topics, then they feel as if they're giving the youth ideas, and that absolutely is not the case. And I know more specifically in my experience, having those conversations has absolutely helped. I mean, our youth look to social media for resources. They look to their friends. So they're already having those conversations. They already have those thoughts in their mind. So having a trusting adult come to them and say, hey, I've noticed that you're behaving differently, or hey, I just noticed these changes about you, these behavioral changes, or these emotional outbursts. Can we have a conversation? So being comfortable with having those conversations has absolutely been a challenge. And so in response to that challenge, I would just say, from a place of non-judgment, if you can, from a place of, I'm not looking to tell you what is right or wrong, but just really to support you and hear you out and get you the support and the resources that you need. So I'm curious, and most importantly, I'm concerned for your safety. So starting those conversations off from that place can absolutely help. And it allows the youth to let down some of their defenses. They know that they're not in trouble, but you're just genuinely concerned about their safety and well-being. Another challenge also has been just individuals in the community not knowing what resources are available. So knowing where to connect a youth to, or knowing how to provide or get a youth connected with a therapist. So absolutely encouraging the resources, more specifically through the Mental Health Center of Denver, utilizing our walk-in crisis center. Those are some resources that you can share with the youth. And keeping in mind, as a youth in the state of Colorado, they don't have to have their parents' permission to seek counseling if they're 12 years old or older. So if that's a concern, or their relationship with their parent or their caregiver is not the best, then they absolutely can seek services on their own.
Great. We have another question. What are
Okay.
some ways to engage youth to being open and or willing to talk about mental health?
Good question. I think really for the youth is letting them know that you're interested in what they have to say, interested in what their thoughts are. So starting that conversation out, maybe by asking them, when you hear the word mental health, what does that mean? Or when someone tells you that they're struggling with their mental health, what does that mean? I think so many times we don't give credit to our youth and younger individuals as far as their knowledge and what they're already aware of. So a lot of times the youth know what it means to struggle with depression, or they may, I know in my experience, they've come to me and they've said, well, I'm struggling with depression, or I have anxiety. And so I've had that conversation. Well, what does that look like? And what does that mean? And then how do you know? Have you been formally diagnosed by a professional, or is this based off a Google search or just a conversation with your friends based on the symptoms and things that you're feeling? Is that what's making you come to that conclusion? So really just opening it up, say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you, and I'm curious to know what you think about, or what you've thought about, or if you've had these struggles or challenges. Our kids absolutely are good with just moving around and hiding things. So for a teenager that's just in their room and like, I'm good, mom, or I'm just doing my homework, and not having that day-to-day interaction or family interaction can sometimes just go unnoticed that they're actually struggling with depression. So again, just opening it up, saying, hey, I'm curious about what you think about, or what's come up, or if you've had this experience, or if you know anyone or have friends that have had these experiences, has been helpful.
Great. We have another question. So
Okay.
what has been the impact of social unrest on the African American youth psyche, and how is Mental Health Center of Denver responding to those needs?
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question. That's a loaded question. So break it down for me, Amy. So what has been the impact to the social psyche? Or could you repeat it for me, please?
Yeah. So the first part was, what has been the impact of the social unrest on the African American youth psyche, and how, as an organization, is Mental Health Center of Denver responding?
Okay. So the first part, it's been heavy. It's been traumatic. It's been, if I was to put like all the emotions into a bowl, it's been that bowl of things. And I think during this time, a lot of times the history, just for the African American community and the struggles and the challenges in that moment are forgotten. So it's not just about what is currently going on, but it's a history of what happened prior to, and how that information has been talked about within the family, within the culture, how that information has been responded to. And within that realm of the trauma and the history, there's a challenge with African American youth trusting professionals that don't look like them. So just being able to have these conversations, being able to encourage the conversation, there's a barrier there, because it's like these individuals or this therapist or that therapist can't relate to me. They don't look like me, they don't talk like me, they don't sound like me, they don't dress like me. They have all of these things. And then the history of these challenges, sometimes those actions were done by individuals that look like that professional. So again, it's just increased that sense of isolation, that sense of I don't connect, I can't connect, and or a level of resentment where I don't want to connect. So within the work that I've been doing and continue as part of the Mental Health Center of Denver is, again, just increasing that awareness. Just because a person doesn't look like you, just because a person doesn't talk like you, doesn't mean on some level they can't relate. At the end of the day, we're all human. We all have basic needs. And when those basic needs are not met, there's challenges, there's unhealthiness, and just an array. It's like a domino effect. The Mental Health Center of Denver continues to partner with individuals within the community and various organizations, again, to increase that awareness, working on increasing more Black therapists. It may not seem like it, but there are Black therapists within the Mental Health Center of Denver. And so what I've encouraged youth within the community to do is, when they're calling in and saying, hey, I want to schedule an intake, they absolutely are okay with asking, I would prefer a male or female, or I would prefer an African American, just to be able to work through some of that trauma and be more comfortable in the room. And I hope I answered that question. Any more questions, Amy?
I don't see any more in the chat right now.
Okay. So again, wanted to be an open dialogue as you may be thinking about some other questions, and you think about youth. Think about what ways you can connect with the individual. Some challenges. We've all, if you're old, we've all been in a place where we were a youth. Some of us had trouble histories as a youth, and found one adult that made that difference and was impactful. And a lot of times it's just the presence and your ability to sit and be in that space with that youth. A lot of times youth, as an adult, we want to dictate and say what is right, what is wrong, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. And really, when a youth is struggling with their mental health, or they're just struggling with responding to life in general, that is not helpful in that moment. So really just finding ways to connect, whether it be like over a song, whether it be over a video game or an activity in some shape, form, or fashion. If you could just find that one thing, and from that place, try and connect with that individual. Slow the conversation down. And again, approach it from a place of curiosity, approach it from a place of, we all have had challenges. No one is exempt. They may look different, they may feel different, but we've all had challenges. And at some point of our life, we've all had challenges, more specifically within our mental health area. So what was most helpful for us in that time? And 9 times out of 10, it was having a conversation, a safe place to have that conversation with an individual that was non-judgmental, an individual that felt like they just understood where you were coming from as a youth.
We have another question. Are you finding that mental health first aid has had an impact with African American youth?
I would have to say yes. And so the reason why I would say yes is that within the mental health first aid curriculum and what um, is talked about in those trainings is really from a place of recognizing things, having an awareness, being able to, when it's not verbally communicated, you can see the changes via the behavior. And so being able to have those conversations and or encourage that youth. If you can't have that conversation with me, find one person that you can have that conversation from. So really, I think without not knowing, I think really the aim and the goal is just to increase awareness and to let individuals that don't have the clinical training within the community that have day-to-day interaction with youth just have an awareness of what some challenges may look like, and more specifically when they have those challenges, what to do when they're faced with those challenges. So I absolutely think it does help. The challenge there is having enough individuals within the community that have had that training. So that, I think, is what makes the difference. We have this training. It's an excellent training, and those that have attended the training say that it's very beneficial, but we definitely need more people within the community, more people that work specifically with the youth that don't have, like I said, don't have that clinical background to take the training, just to have a greater awareness.
Great. Another question. What would you suggest doing if you know of a youth who would benefit from seeking mental health services, but they refuse because they feel like seeing a therapist means you're trying to fix them and they don't feel they need fixing?
I love that question, and and it often comes up. So I do have experience working with mandated youth. So it was not their choice that they were working with me, but had to be. And so whether you're a parent, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're a professional, it's really, again, having that conversation with the youth to understand what is it their thought process, exploring really what therapy is all about. I love sharing with my youth, therapy is not me trying to fix you, like I'm not a fixer, but really therapy is just about is having a relationship. And so it's no different than a youth going to the store, trying on a new pair of Jordans or trying on a new pair of jeans. You have to, what style you want, what jeans or a shoe you want, but sometimes depending on the make, your true size doesn't fit. So you may have to go up a half size or down a half size, but you definitely try on that shoe to make sure that it feels comfortable and it just doesn't look good on you. And that's really how I explain the therapeutic relationship to youth that are hesitant. It's like, it's a relationship. It's a place where you can go and talk to someone that is not within your circle. So there's a disconnect and you can just be open and honest with them. A lot of times youth are having troubles with their parents or their caregiver. And so just being able to have that conversation with that caregiver is a struggle because they look at them from that parental lens. And so it's a matter of doing what's right or wrong. Also asking the youth, why do you perceive therapy as that way? And so 9 times out of 10, it's based on a conversation amidst their friends, or it's based on Googling something, and just the realm of how therapy historically has been portrayed in media. It's more, you go and laying on a couch, and that is so not what therapy is. Sharing the awareness that there's all different types of therapy. So you may not be the person that just wants to sit in a room and talk with an individual. There's art therapy, there's all different types. And so really just connecting with that youth. And that's why I can't emphasize that enough, that connection. If you're able to connect with that youth, then you're able to understand and know what forms or modality would work best for them, but really getting to understand why they view therapy as that way. Any other questions, Amy? I can't believe we're almost at time already. I just looked at the clock and it's 12:55. No. Were you saying something, Amy?
I just said no other questions right now.
Okay. Well, just in closing thoughts, I so appreciate you all jumping on and just sharing this time with me. I hope that something was said that may spark your interest or even thought process in regards to what it really means to just hold space with the youth, and more specifically the African American youth. So many times at the root of everything, there's a lack of connection. If we think about when we were infants and like how we develop our attachment and just how our caregivers respond to our needs and how they're met or not met. As a youth, we're carrying that initial response, that initial relationship. And so a lot of times in these youth's mind, that foundation is still there. And whether it be a solid foundation or whether it be a broken foundation, it's so worthwhile with just asking from their perspective, because if you ask them, they will definitely tell you. And sometimes there's that level of resentment or resistance to, nope, I don't want to talk to that therapist, or nope, they're trying to fix me and nothing is wrong. But again, at the root of it is just about making a connection and having a relationship with the youth and the individual. And why it's so important is our youth are like our next leaders. Our youth are the next ones to be in control and decide what is and what isn't. And so we absolutely want to encourage and have a more healthy generation of youth, or a generation of youth that understand we all have challenges. And just because you struggle with mental health does not mean that you have to struggle in silence. There's absolutely help. There's absolutely support. And even if you don't have that individual that you can connect to, reach out. You can reach out to the Mental Health Center of Denver. You can Google, therapists in my area. Youth are so tech savvy. There's so many ways, but just encourage those that you work with, those that you are responsible for, to have conversations. And just because you have a conversation isn't a sign of weakness. Just because you have a conversation doesn't mean that you're less than or not. It's just a matter of having an open conversation, no differently than when's the next Jordan release. It can be just that simple. So I encourage all of us, if nothing else during this week, just think of one youth that you can have that conversation with and how you would approach that conversation. And it can be simply as, what do you think about when you hear the words mental health? What comes up for you? What does that mean? I think I'm at time, Amy. Again, thank you all. So appreciate the support. So appreciate you jumping on. And at this point, Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think that we are at time. And so thank you everyone for joining. And if you have any further questions later on, don't hesitate to reach out to us at Mental Health Center of Denver.